When hard times stretch past one bad season, when it stops being a rough year and turns into a long stretch where nothing feels stable, the people who are still eating tend to have one thing in common. They planted perennials, not the crops you replant every spring, burning time and money and energy you might not have. Perennials are the ones that come back on their own, year after year, and keep producing even when seeds and fertilizer and fuel are hard to come by. Most of us start out growing tomatoes and beans, and there's nothing wrong with that. But perennials work differently. You put them in the ground once, and they can feed you for decades. No reseeding, no tilling, no supply chain standing between you and dinner. So before we go any further, do one thing. If you're thinking long term, hit subscribe. And here's why that actually matters for this video. Perennials take years to get established. The gardener who plants this year is the one harvesting in 3, while everyone else is still hunting for seed. Subscribe now and you'll be ready before you need to be. These 10 crops cover roughly growing zones 3 through 7, which is most of North America. There's one warm climate exception on the list, and I'll wave a flag when we get to it. Every plant here made the cut for the same 3 reasons. It survives neglect, it gives you real calories or real nutrition, and it regrows itself with almost no help from you. Let's start the countdown. Number 10, the Siberian pea shrub. Most people have never heard of Caragana arborescens, but in some of the harshest places on Earth, Siberia, Mongolia, northern Canada, this shrub has carried people and their animals through winters that would flatten most garden crops. It isn't a decoration, it's a workhorse. Here's what makes it special. It's a nitrogen-fixing legume, which means it pulls nitrogen straight out of the air and feeds it back into the soil through its roots. Everything growing nearby benefits, so if you can't buy fertilizer and your soil is worn out, this plant quietly rebuilds it while it feeds you. It grows 8 to 12 feet tall, shrugs off temperatures down to -40, and survives drought, bad soil, and being completely ignored. Plant it once as a hedge, a windbreak, or a living fence, and it produces small pea-like seeds every year for 50 years or more. The seeds are mildly nutty, somewhere between a lentil and a chickpea, and they're high in protein. Harvest them in late summer as the pods fill out and start to dry, then shell and cook them like any dried legume, or grind them into flour. A mature shrub gives you a few pounds a year. A row of 10 is a permanent protein source you never replant. And there's a bonus most people miss. The young spring shoots are edible too, and chickens, goats, and rabbits will happily browse the leaves. So it feeds you, feeds your animals, and improves your soil all at once. When times get long and hard, soil fertility is usually the thing that runs out first, and this plant fixes that problem while it fills your plate. Which brings us to number 9, a vegetable that's somehow 3 vegetables at once. Sea kale. Crambe maritima is a coastal European plant that's fed people for centuries, and yet almost nobody in North America grows it. That's a real shame, because it might be the most versatile, low-maintenance perennial vegetable you can put in the ground. Nearly every part of it is edible, just at different times of year. In early spring, the young shoots taste like asparagus. As the plant matures, the leaves cook up like cabbage or kale. Then in late spring, the flower buds taste like broccoli, as long as you catch them before they open. 3 crops from one plant, and that plant keeps coming back for 10 to 15 years. Sea kale is hardy to zone 4, and it actually prefers to be left alone. Give it rich soil and a lot of water, and it gets weak. Give it a sunny, well-drained corner and a bit of neglect, and it thrives. Start it from root cuttings or crowns, mulch it lightly, and don't harvest the first year. Let it settle in. From year 2 on, harvest the shoots in spring. If you cover them with a bucket or a mound of soil to blanch them, they come out sweeter and more tender. Let a few flower stalks go to seed, or just let it self-sow and move the seedlings where you want them. The crops that look after themselves are the ones still feeding you when your time is stretched thin. That's a leafy crop handled. Number 8 is the one that fills your stomach. The Jerusalem artichoke, also called the sunchoke. If you've ever grown potatoes, you know the work. The digging, the hilling, the replanting every single year. This gives you the same kind of dense, filling tubers, except it's perennial. It barely needs you, and it grows so eagerly that your real problem will be keeping it in bounds. One tuber planted in spring turns into 5 to 10 pounds of tubers by fall, and they store right there in the ground all winter, so you dig them fresh as you need them, even through snow. Your root cellar is the garden itself. Sunchokes are native to North America, so they handle poor soil, drought, shade, and neglect without complaint. Plant them once and they settle in as a permanent food source. The tubers are slightly sweet and nutty, somewhere between a potato and a water chestnut. Roast them, mash them, slice them raw, or ferment them. One honest warning: they're high in inulin, a fiber that's great for your gut but causes gas if you eat a big plate of it before your body's used to it. Start small and work up. Plant the tubers in spring, 4 to 6 inches deep and about a foot apart, and they'll shoot up 6 to 10 feet tall with bright sunflower blooms. After the first frost knocks the tops down, dig what you need and leave some in the ground to come back. It's about as close to plant it and forget it as a calorie crop gets. Now, a lot of people skip the next one because they think it's fussy. They're wrong. Number 7, asparagus. People treat it like it's too fancy or too delicate for a serious garden, but it's one of the lowest effort, highest reward perennials you can plant. Once it's established, it comes back every single spring for 2 decades or more. And here's the part that matters when food is tight. It pushes up in early spring, often before the last frost, when almost nothing else is ready and you've been living on stored staples. Those spears are loaded with vitamins A, C, K, and folate, exactly the fresh nutrition you've been missing all winter. A bed about 10 feet by 4 gives you 10 to 20 pounds of spears a year, 6 to 8 weeks of daily picking, with almost no work once it's mulched. The catch is patience. Asparagus takes 2 to 3 years to settle in, so you don't harvest much the first year or two, but then it produces for 15 to 25 years. You plant it once and your grandchildren can eat from the same bed. To set it up, dig a trench 6 to 8 inches deep, lay the crowns 12 to 18 inches apart, cover them with a couple inches of soil, and fill the trench in as they grow. Mulch it heavily every fall. In spring, snap the spears off at ground level once they hit 6 to 8 inches. Pick daily for those 6 to 8 weeks, then stop and let the rest grow into tall, feathery fronds that feed next year's roots. Think of it as insurance that pays out every spring. Number 6 is even tougher, and it does a second job most people never notice: rhubarb. Most folks grow it for pie and stop there, but in a self-reliant garden, it's so much more. It's hardy all the way to zone 3. It puts up with bad soil, and once it's going, it gives you 5 to 10 pounds of stalks per plant every year for 20 years or more. The stalks are high in vitamin K and calcium, and they keep well frozen, canned, or dried. Here's the part people overlook. Those huge leaves, the ones you can't eat because they're full of oxalic acid, make excellent mulch. Lay them around your other plants, and they break down fast, feeding the soil and smothering weeds at the same time. Food from the stalks, fertility from the leaves, one plant. Plant the crowns in early spring, somewhere sunny or part shade with decent drainage, 3 to 4 feet apart, mulch around the base, and then more or less ignore it. It doesn't want fertilizer, doesn't need much water, and doesn't care if you forget it exists. Starting in year 2, harvest by grabbing a stalk at the base and twisting as you pull. Don't cut it, since a cut can invite disease, and only take about a third of the plant at a time. Every 5 to 7 years, split the crown in early spring, and one plant becomes 5. So far, we've covered protein, calories, and greens. Number 5 looks tiny next to all that, but don't underestimate it. Chives. This is the herb everyone grows on a windowsill and then mostly ignores. In a resilient garden, it earns its place because it's a tough perennial onion relative that comes back every year, asks for nothing, and keeps your food worth eating when variety disappears. And that last part is bigger than it sounds. When your diet shrinks down to potatoes, beans, and squash on repeat, flavor stops being a luxury. Eat the same bland meals long enough and you get what's called appetite fatigue. People simply stop eating enough. Chives put an onion-like lift on almost anything and keep meals appealing, and they bring along the sulfur compounds and antioxidants that the onion family is known for, which help when your diet is narrow. Chives are hardy to zone 3, grow in sun or part shade, tolerate poor soil, and spread slowly into thick clumps. One plant becomes a permanent patch, giving you edible leaves and edible flowers from spring through fall. Plant divisions or seeds in spring, about 6 inches apart, water them occasionally that first season, then leave them be. Harvest by snipping with scissors, never yanking, and they grow back in a couple of weeks. Split a clump every 3 or 4 years, and again, one becomes 5. The crops that keep you actually wanting to eat are just as important as the ones that fill you up. Speaking of greens that never quit, number 4 takes it to another another level: perennial kale and tree collards. Most people treat kale as a one-and-done annual. Plant the seed, harvest a season, watch it bolt and die. Tree collards and certain perennial kale varieties don't play by those rules. They're woody, almost shrub-like, and in mild climates they hand you edible leaves nearly year-round for 5 to 10 years from a single planting. Leafy greens carry the vitamins A, C, K, plus calcium and iron, and those are exactly the nutrients that vanish first when fresh food gets scarce. Annual greens are seasonal. Perennial kale is closer to constant. Tree collards grow 4 to 8 feet tall. You start them from cuttings rather than seed, and they root almost too easily. One plant gives you several pounds of leaves a year, picked continuously without ever killing it. The flavor is straight up kale, earthy and a little bitter, good raw when the leaves are young and great cooked into soups and stir-fries when they're older. Now here's the honest catch, and it's the warm climate exception I promised. Tree collards are tender. They reliably overwinter only around zone 7 to 8 and warmer, not across the whole 3 through 7 range like the rest of this list. If you're in a colder spot, you've got options. Grow them in containers you can bring inside, take cuttings to overwinter indoors, or pick a hardier perennial kale instead. Dobonton's kale, for example, takes a lot more cold than true tree collards. To start one, take a 6 to 8 inch cutting, strip the lower leaves, push it into moist soil, and it roots in 2 to 3 weeks. Harvest the outer leaves as you go, and take new cuttings anytime you want more plants. Number 3 is another forgotten green, but this one laughs at the heat: Good King Henry. The botanical name is Blightum bonus henricus, and it fed Europeans all the way back to medieval times before it slipped into obscurity. That's a mistake worth correcting, because it's a spinach alternative that outproduces spinach, handles more cold, and refuses to bolt in summer heat the way annual spinach does. Think about regular spinach for a second. The moment it gets warm or the days get long, it bolts, and you're done after maybe 4 to 6 weeks. Good King Henry just keeps giving you edible leaves from early spring through late fall. No bolting. One plant, roughly 6 months of harvest. The leaves are mild and a little earthy, like spinach, and the young spring shoots can be blanched and eaten like asparagus. A quick honesty note, because hype helps nobody. Like spinach and chard, these leaves are fairly high in oxalates and contain some saponins, so eat them young, cook them rather than piling them raw into a salad bowl, and keep your portions sensible. Treat it as a steady staple green, not something you eat by the bucket. It's hardy to zone 3, handles part shade and poor soil, and produces for 5 to 10 years. Start it from seed or root divisions in spring, about 12 inches apart. Harvest the outer leaves as you need them, and cut it back in late fall so it comes up fresh in spring. Number 2 is one of the strangest plants you'll ever grow, and once you have it, you may never buy onion seed again. Egyptian walking onions. They go by a few names: tree onions or top-setting onions, and they're a perennial onion that gives you both edible greens and small bulbs, and then replants itself. Here's the trick that earns the name. Instead of flowering, the plant grows a little cluster of tiny bulblets right at the top of the stalk. As those bulblets get heavy, the stalk leans over, touches the ground, and the bulblets root and grow into new plants. The onion literally walks across your garden. Plant it once, and you've got a patch that renews itself forever. The greens eat like scallions year-round in mild climates, and the bulblets work like shallots or get pickled whole. They're hardy to zone 3, tolerate poor soil, grow in sun or part shade, and are about as hard to kill as a weed. Drought, neglect, deep freezes, none of it phases them. Plant the bulblets or small plants 4 inches deep and 6 inches apart. Water occasionally that first season, then turn them loose. Snip the greens like chives and harvest the bulblets in late summer when they're firm. Eat some, replant some, and the cycle runs itself. When you can't count on buying seed, a crop that reproduces on its own is worth more than almost anything. And that brings us to number 1, the crop that belongs in far more gardens than it's in: American groundnut. Apios americana is a native North American perennial vine that grows edible tubers high in protein and starch, and on top of that, it fixes nitrogen into your soil as it grows. Calories, protein, and fertility all from one plant. Here's the number that makes it special. The tubers run about 15 to 17% protein by dry weight. That's higher than potatoes, sweet potatoes, or any common root crop. When meat is scarce and beans are doing all the heavy lifting, groundnut gives you another real source of protein, and it's perennial. The flavor is nutty and a little sweet, like a potato crossed with a bean. Boil it, roast it, mash it, or drop it into a stew. And like the sunchoke, the tubers keep in the ground over winter. Being native, it's right at home here. It's hardy to zone 3, happy in sun or part shade, and it loves damp ground near a stream, a pond, or any low wet spot where other crops struggle. As a nitrogen-fixing legume, it's improving your soil the whole time it's feeding you. It's a vine 6 to 10 feet with fragrant purple-brown flowers in summer, and it spreads slowly underground into a permanent patch. 2 honest notes before you plant it. First, patience again. The trisiocore take a couple of seasons to bulk up, so think of the big harvests as a year, 2, and beyond reward. Second, because it's a legume, a small number of people react to it, so try a little the first time before you make it a staple. To grow it, plant the trisiocore 3 inches deep and about a foot apart next to a trellis or fence. Mulch lightly and water it through that first season. After that, it takes care of itself. Dig in late fall or early spring and always leave some tubers behind to regrow. Protein, calories, and soil fertility from a native plant built to survive without you. That's why it's number 1. So there's your 10. Plant any of them once and they can feed you for decades with no annual replanting, no scrambling for seed, and no fertilizer supply chain to depend on. Permanent food that keeps producing when other things stop. But here's the reality check, and it's the whole point of the video. Perennials need time to get established. If you wait until you obviously need them, the window's already closed. The time to plant is now, while crowns and cuttings and tubers are still easy to get, because the gardener who plants this year is the one harvesting in 3, while everyone else is still shopping for seed. So tell me, which one are you planting first? Drop it in the comments, and if you're serious about building food security that actually lasts, subscribe. This channel is about systems that hold up over the long haul, not scrambling when it's already too late. I'll see you in the next one.